Hi everybody. Today we're going to do a little bit of basic maintenance here on my 125, and we're going to do a before and after water change like I usually do. But today we're going to look at a little bit of behind the scenes kind of stuff. We're going to look at my canister filter. I am actually going to get in there today and do a filter cleaning. So I'm going to try to use my head cam again and try to give you a first person point of view of what I see when I'm dealing with my canister filter. I want to explain a little bit about how I handle the biomedia when I'm doing the maintenance. I want to show you how I pack it with filter material, what kind of filter material I use, and just give you a basic rundown on what I do with my canister filter and how I set it up in my tanks. I'm trying to work my way up to doing a video about additives and different types of materials you can run in your tank, like zeolite and nitrosorb and things like that. So I am working up towards a video about that sort of thing if you're interested. So subscribe now if you're not already, that way you won't miss it when it's coming up. I really don't know exactly when that's going to be. It's been rolling around in my head for quite a while now, but I am getting close, and today is going to be a little more of an inside look at what I do and how low maintenance my tanks really are run, because we're going to actually look inside my filter, and we are going to discuss my use of additives or lack thereof a little bit while we do this water change. I'm also going to get in there and remove some of the plants. I got to get in there and wipe the glass down. We're going to, as usual, check my water parameters. We're going to have a look at my pH and my nitrates and just see what's going on with the tank to make sure nothing's out of whack, and also to make sure that when I add the new water, I'm not shifting what's in the tank too far. So we're probably only going to do about a 25%, maybe a 30% water change today. If the pH is not too different, I might do more than that, but it's really going to depend on what the pH looks like once I get in there and actually start doing this testing and stuff. So as I promised, you're going to get a little bit of a behind the scenes look today. This is one of the things I do when I'm filming to reduce glare on the tanks. So let me turn the overhead light on, and you will see I take my black drop cloth that I often will hang from my drop ceiling, just regular clothespins and the drop ceiling, and I can hang that and move it wherever I want. But in this case, I didn't feel like messing with all that, so I simply draped towels and my black drop cloth over top of the tank. So as soon as I'm done filming, I can pull them off the tanks, and we're back to the room looking good as always. And there, of course, is my good camera positioned and waiting to do some serious filming towards the end of this video. So stay tuned. The next step will be over at the workstation, and we're going to do some water testing, and then we will come back and we will start looking at how I break this down and how we do a water change. So sit tight and get ready for a good one. Alright everybody, here we go. Hopefully this will work out. I'm going to try to do this step by step, but I will be honest with you, it's a little weird having a camera on my head while I'm doing this. I feel like I'm being watched, if that makes any sense. So it's throwing me off my game a little bit as far as my normal routine. What I do is I start by putting enough water in my siphon so that I don't have a big air bubble trapped in it. And I do keep this center section and these forward sections with no light on them so that I can lift these lids very easily. In fact, I think we're going to do right down here in this end. Then I simply put it in bottom first to allow the bubbles to come up and out. And that way when I'm done, I don't have any air bubbles trapped in there. This little tiny one won't matter. So then we can go over to the, get used to that. You're going to go through that curtain a lot of times. We come over here where I unscrew the hose, and I only do this because it drains a lot faster. The lower you can put this end, the faster drain you'll get and the more suction you'll get. So we leave that to start draining, and while the tank is draining, we now go back here to where my heater and my filter are plugged in. It's very important to turn your heater off while you're draining your water. You do not want that heater exposed to air. I do leave my power head on during this process because I want the water to continue circulating. As the level gets lower, the detritus will get kicked up a lot easier, and once we're done with this, we will get on to vacuuming, and I will actually use a hand vac and one of these buckets, and underneath this wood down here on the end I get a lot of detritus buildup, so we'll get in there and we'll do some hand vacuuming around that. We're also going to wipe the glass down, etc. But first things first, we get this out. This comes with a valve. You don't have to unscrew anything. You simply close the valve and then gently remove that. I keep that back there for that very purpose. Of course, it usually does that, but that's all right. That valve does not leak. I never worry about that. Keep 2 buckets ready. The square one is what I use for this because you'll see it's got the light hanging down below it, and I can simply set that right there. Now my light's safe. I'm going to leave that alone. Nothing's going to get hurt. These I pull out top down, so obviously when we get to the other room, the bottom one will be the one that comes out first. It's not too bad looking. This material I have here, I highly recommend anybody go and get it. It is simply, can't even think of what it's called now, shelf liner. You can get it at any of your big Mart stores or anything like that. It comes in a roll for $1 or $2, maybe 3 or 4, I don't know. It's not expensive at all, but it's just called shelf liner. It's a little plastic roll. It's great for having around if you need to lay something down to keep your carpet dry or anything else. So this doesn't look too bad. It's definitely in need of a change, but it's not looking awful at the moment. Now that was all biofiltration. This is my actual physical mechanical filtration, is the bottom tray. And that is it. I have no additives. I run no carbon. I don't run any kind of Purigen or Nitrosorb or Zeolite or anything. I just have surface area for biologicals, and then I use several sheets of this material that we're going to go over and look at when we clean this out and get this fixed up. So that's what the inside of my filter canister looks like. I'm going to go take this and just dump it down the toilet in the other room. I won't do that on video. And right now we're going to go ahead and just move this over into here. And we're going to start cleaning it up. So this all comes out. Pretty nasty, but not incredible. I've seen far worse than that. And then these can simply get restocked with this. Now this is just a roll of batting material, and I do prefer the rolls. I have some of this stuff. In addition to many different pumps and filters and rocks and stones and ornaments and decorations and stuff that has accumulated over the years. I have piles of that stuff. So when I'm doing one of these filters, I normally take the roll out and I cut a sheet specially for this filter. I try to cut it about as wide as the filter is, more or less. This stuff is very flexible, so it doesn't matter. You can rip it and tear it and stuff it and do whatever you want with it. It's just a little easier to manage when it's in sheets. I think it is anyway. If you like the fill, knock yourself out. It's the same stuff, it's just polyester. Again, this is simply woven into a sheet. And you get a very long sheet of it once you've unfolded it. So I usually just do a few folds, layered in. It honestly doesn't matter, you know, as long as you get it in there. By doing it in layers, I think it tends to trap more than it would if you just crumpled it up and stuffed it in there, but that's just my personal opinion. I've never done any real serious experimentation to find out if it's true or not. But this also makes it easier when removing it. Bring a little extra out sometimes so you can stuff it into the corners a little bit. And that's pretty much it. All you really want to do is just get this tray filled back up with polyfill. that tray is done. So for these, this is just biological filtration. These are just ceramic beads. The water can still freely and easily pass through them, so we're not going to worry about those. This is a purchased filter pad that I had and I used for a little additional physical filtration. That is used up, so we're not going to worry about that anymore. We'll just take a piece of this, fold it in half, and I put my bio rings back in. These are just bio balls, and they too have a nasty piece. Now this is what I put in myself from last time. Let me dump some of these out actually. This is a piece of my material. No, it's not. That's actually a manufactured piece, and that is disgusting. So it's interesting that that one, so far up in the chain, collected so much nastiness, because that was gross. So I was kind of surprised to see all that. Let's get these out of the way for the time being. Fill this back up. I have to cut another section, or I can just use some of this. Again, this is not anything that has to be super specific, as long as there's some filtration in there. The key to the top sections for me is the biofiltration as opposed to the physical filtration. I've said before that the key feature of your filter, the key function of your filter, is to move material or move water around the tank into your biomaterial. So the physical filtration is not that important. You can do that by vacuuming. You can do it by simply having one mechanical layer that gets in there and takes everything out the way I do. The real key to these is the biofiltration. And you know what? This top section has one of these very coarse sponges, and it does not look too terrible as far as water flowing through it. So this is not detritus from the tank. This is all biofiltration, just like builds up in these sponges. All that gunk you're seeing is good stuff. It's not stuff I want to take out of the tank. So this tray is going to get left alone. I'm not going to do anything with this at all. So we put them back in the bucket in reverse order again. We go back in the other room. And I need to dump this out, so bear with me. We're going to do this in the sink. So that's what it looks like inside once it's been dumped. Now we will again go in reverse order. We'll start with the physical filtration, because the water comes in, goes down to the bottom, and then moves up through your trays. So we simply do this one after another till we're back up to our top layer. Now I need to fill this back up with water till it's reasonably full, and that will make starting it back up once I get the tank up and running a little bit easier. So I'm not going to show all the video of all that. That was just the basic breakdown of the filter. Once it's full of water, we will go ahead and put this back on, and then we can start looking at what's going on in the tank. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the video here, get a few things in order, and then we'll be right back. Alright everybody, I've got the canister refilled with water. I've got the other room cleaned up a little bit. I had a few things I wanted to do with the ceramic rings. I do have ceramic rings in the filter on my brackish tank, and they're really big. They don't fit in that filter properly, and I did have really small ones in here, so I actually took some of those rings out and set them aside, and they're going to go in my brackish tank, but that'll be for a later video. Now that I got the water back in here, we need to put the top back on. So you always want to make sure you've got it lined up properly so that all the clips are facing the right direction and the light goes down the proper tube. Once you get it secured in, these two clips will actually pull it down more into position, while these two clips actually lock it, if you can get it in properly. There we go. So the last thing we will do is put that in and get it hooked back up, but we want to leave that till last. I do want to get this out of my way for the time being, so we're going to put it back here. And so I do not forget that this is unplugged, and I do not forget that my heater is unplugged. We're going to leave this door open until the very last thing. This door will not get closed again until that is re-plugged and everything is up and running and functioning. But before we lose any more water out of the tank, let's go and have a look at some water parameters. Now there's two different ways you can do this. I brought these vials with me, so we're going to dip it right out of the tank here. Personally, I always fill them up once and then dump them, and then fill them again. And that way, if there was any water left over from my faucet from when I rinsed them, we get that out of there. Now, the reason I'm doing this now is because we're getting pretty far down in the water change, and I don't want to go, wow, just dumped that one out completely. I don't want to go any further until I find out what's going on with my water parameters. If my pH is going to be radically different, I don't want to do too much more of a water change than I'm doing at the moment. And the reason I'm putting some in this cap, if you're wondering, is so that if I do inadvertently go a little too much out, I have a little spare to put back in. Again, I want to remind you that the bottom of the curvature is where your water line should be, not the top. And we are going to test for pH, and we're going to test for nitrates. So let's test for pH first, because that's quick and easy, just 3 simple drops. Quick shake. So we're looking at fairly acidic. Now when we see what the tap water looks like, we're actually going to find out that the tap water is about 7.4 or thereabouts, or at least it should be. So we've got a significant difference between the tank and the tap, so we don't want to lose too much more water, or it will shift the pH in the tank a little more than I'm comfortable with. So let's see what we got. So you can see there's a fairly significant difference between one and the other. This is at about 7.3 where it normally sits, and then this again is about 6.4 to 6.5. And yes, I can do that just by eyeballing it up. I've done this a lot of times. So we're somewhere between 6.6 and 6.4 on this one. That doesn't go back in there. This we are looking at somewhere between 7.2 and 7.6. So it sits right around 7.3 where I would expect it to. So we're not too worried about losing too much. What am I doing now? We're doing the nitrate test now. To do the nitrate test, you take bottle number 1. You don't need to shake it or anything. You just need to put your 10 drops in. I hope I've got enough left. Be very careful when you pull the nozzle back out that you don't touch the side and get that final drip to go into the vial, or it will foul your test. Once you put your first reagent in, you just give it a good mix. Doesn't have to be for any time length. You just want to make sure that's all mixed around. The second bottle, however, is very important. You want to mix this up very, very thoroughly. I've already done this in advance, so I don't have to sit here for a very long time while I'm doing it, but it did sit for a few minutes while I was getting this video ready. So forgive the shaking, but this is a very important part of this test. You've really got to make sure this vial is shaken thoroughly, and then you add your 10 drops. Now if that sticks or gums up, or you have to squeeze really hard as it's starting to come out, if it looks white or chalky, then you did not shake it thoroughly enough. There are suspended solids in here. Think about it as having very, very, very fine suspended sand in here, and the sand is what needs to go into this vial to make the test activate. You have to shake this thoroughly enough that that sand, if you will, is all mixed out throughout the vial, so when you drop your 10 drops in here, you get the correct number of grains of sand. Again, not really sand, but that's a good way of thinking about it. So if you don't shake that thoroughly, you do not get an accurate test. And when I say thoroughly, I mean very thoroughly. Imagine once you set that down, by now that stuff is already settling out of it and is no longer evenly mixed. You've really got to take that shaking stage very seriously in that second part. Once you've got it mixed, you simply need to keep it agitated for another 30 to 40 seconds. Probably not even that long. It says to do it for a minute, but I find that once you really start to get a noticeable color change, you can probably stop and you're pretty good. So in about 5 minutes we'll come back, but again, based on experience, I can already tell you we're looking fine. We're not even going to be at 40 parts per million. We'll barely be over 20 by the time that gets done. So let's go back over now and we will start looking at how we actually clean the tank. And right now I'm going to start by simply getting my hands in here and pulling a lot of these floating leaves and debris and stuff out. And it's tedious, but it's what has to be done. This is a piece of temple plant that is already rooted and it's just kind of floating there, so I'm going to put it back. I don't see any reason to take it out. Over here I will tend to get a lot of stuff collected because it catches in the water sprite that's in there floating. So you can see it's quite easy to start picking leaves out of here. Now this will give you a good idea. See how funky and nasty and green that is? That's all that nasty Spirogyra algae that is still in there. It's just being kept under control. But this stuff that's right up underneath that light all day long, it really tends to grow in there. But I keep it at bay in the rest of my tank, so I don't worry too much about it. And one thing I will do while that's all exposed like that is I will take my handy dandy hydrogen peroxide, and that will actually help keep it at bay. It won't kill it off by any means. This stuff's tougher than that, but it does kill some of it, and that's better than nothing. So let's see, that looks like the main bulk of the floating stuff. Again, I'm not too worried about that. I can get it a little more as I start filling the tank back up. I'm kind of working against time here. I don't want to let the tank get too empty. As I said, the pH is not completely even, so we're going to call that good for the time being. The next step will be to use a little bit of this stuff that I use for my filter, and we're going to go wipe the glass down. So you can see after several minutes of sitting, again, I know this does not come out right on camera, but we're still well below this 40 parts per million. I'd call it over 20, but it's not 40 yet, so I'm not too worried about what those turned out to be anyway. By the time we're done this water change, we'll have it down below 20. So all I do, move stuff out of my way so I don't kill myself, and I simply get in here and wipe. Now sometimes I will actually spray this with hydrogen peroxide first, and I will, if I'm doing a massive water change, I'll let the water come all the way down, and then I'll wipe the glass like I'm doing now that's exposed above the water with hydrogen peroxide. But not always, and not in this case, because we're just going to wipe this glass down quickly. We're going to call this water change good. We're going to start filling it back up. And while we're filling it back up, I will get my hand vac in here and start working on getting some of the detritus out from underneath there. So we will get that on video too. Watch out, little guys. My otocinclists don't really mind me doing this. I actually have to gently push them out of the way a lot of times. So now you can see down here I'm getting a lot of stuff off the glass that I missed last time I did this. Alright, now the last time I did this, you'll see I actually pulled a little piece of the substrate up that got caught in this. The last time I did this, I got a little overzealous when I was cleaning, and right in here, you can't see it now, I know, but there are some scratches on my glass now, and it is from doing this. And I hope my Tenopoma moves out of the way without being too incredibly freaked out, because I really need to clean right where he's sitting. Watch out, little guy. Although you're not very little anymore. Come on. Move. Watch out. Come on. No. I need to get in here. Come on. Alright, there you go. Sheesh. You can have it back in a second. So all I want to do is clean house a little for you. And that's it. That's how we wipe the glass down. Now that didn't pull too much out, but I do like doing this better than scraping, just because scraping puts 100% of the debris right back in the tank. This does at least collect a little bit of it, and if you want to really get it out, if it's anything you're worried about, you can do a few wipes, get this nasty, and then gently remove it and take another piece of it and go in and wipe again, and you can actually work on getting a lot out as opposed to doing it this way. So we're going to go ahead and stop here for another segment, and then we will be back once we get the tank started filling back up, and I'm going to get the vac and show you how I get under there and do a little bit of vacuuming. Alright, before we start vacuuming, we're going to start refilling. So to remove the hose from the shower, I have to lift it up and get it above the water level in the tank, which you can see is right here. This is where the water is going to stay. So as long as you keep it above the water line, it won't drain and drip on you. I just screw it back in, and you can see we're now below the water line again, and it will start draining. So I know where to put it as far as where to turn the knobs to get the temperature about right. Simply switch the valve from going this way to going that way, and the tank will now begin filling itself back up. So we're done with all this stuff. We need to come in here and grab my large vac. The bucket is already in here. While the tank is now filling, we are going to get in here and vac around this log. Now, when I get the vac started, this does have a valve in it that you can shake and get started, but it's a pain in the butt and they usually break. So the way I do it when not using that is I just use my mouth. I suck water into the tube, but I don't suck water into my mouth. I watch the flow, and as soon as it's flowing down, you know, I keep the tube up here, and once it starts flowing down, you can take it out of your mouth and put your thumb over it, and then move it down and let go of your thumb, and it'll start draining again, and that way you're much, much less likely, note I say less likely, to get it in your mouth. See, so I'm, you know, that tube's still got a foot or two of air. The water is actually right here. So when I let go of it, now we get the siphon started, and that didn't get anywhere near my mouth. So what I usually will do is get in first and just get anything that's already loose that I can just sort of get out of the way and get the water flowing a little more freely through here. And then I will hold the vac in place as best I can, or just keep it down here near the bottom. Now keep in mind, my power head, sorry if my arm is in the way, I'm having a hard time doing this. My power head keeps the water flowing around the tank this way, so the water flow is coming past here anyway. And what I do, let's see if I can just wedge that in there, so I just gently lift that up. You see all the detritus that's starting to kick up? Of course, get down in any areas where there's little nooks and crannies or corners, anything you can do to move it around with your hands. This is also a good time to use a turkey baster, or whatever you want to call it, a little squeeze bulb, suction bulb. I think most people probably just call them turkey basters. But this is all we're going to do down here, is just work on getting some of this nastiness pulled out of the tank. I'm sorry you keep showing you the back of my arm like that. I know this is not working out real well, but it's just the way I have to hold the vac to keep it near the bottom. Once again, the otosynchlists don't really mind sharing the tank with other people, so you got to work around them. There's also a lot of detritus that will get trapped down around the plant roots. And while it is easy to get distracted talking, it's important to keep an eye on the water level in your bucket. So all in all, that's not too bad. That's not too filthy. We saw that my nitrates weren't too bad. pH, of course, is not an indicator of cleanliness, but the pH was fairly low, where I normally expect it to be in my tanks. They sit for a while, they have a lot of wood in them, and I do not have a lot of buffering capacity in my water, so therefore I tend to get a little bit of pH drop over time. When we're done this water change, we will test again and we will see what the pH is after the water change, and it shouldn't be too much different than it was when we started. I might bring it up to maybe 6.8 or something like that, but we will still stay within the realm of acidity and not, you know, cross over that neutral line and get up into alkaline water. So we're going to call that the end of that vac. That was an additional 5 gallons of water, and that was taken directly from where the detritus accumulates. So we got a little bit of filth out of there. More importantly, the tank is now filling back up, and I don't want to get distracted by doing anything else while that happens. So that was more or less it. After this, we'll do one last look at the pH and see what that looks like, and then we'll do the final before and after and any closing thoughts. So I hope you enjoyed so far. We're almost done. All right, everybody, we're almost done filling the tank up, and the last thing we got to do is get the filter up and running. So it's always a good idea to wait until your surface skimmer is underwater, or you'll actually suck air in and you'll cause more bubbles and everything in your line than you want. So we just reach in. I'll bring this out so you can see it a little better. We simply put this back in. If it's not fully in, or if it's not in properly, this won't close. Once it does, you can actually hear the water start to flow. We will put it back in place. Once it is back in place and hooked up, when I pulled it out, I pulled the cord out as well. So I had to stop filming, lie down on the ground and reach behind there to pull the cord back out. So that's what you need to do to get it started, to get the water flowing again. And then of course that's what you see once it starts flowing again. The vast majority of that is actually air bubbles and will get out of the tank fairly quickly. But there is a bunch of loose debris and everything that's been kicked up within the filter. A lot of that is simply biomaterial, so it's no big deal. We are still filling the tank, so I can't forget about that. I've got about ½ an inch left to go, so we're still good for the moment. One of the tips that I will get, if you can hear this gurgling and bubbling, if you get air trapped in here, instead of pushing on this, simply try rocking it a little bit. If you can move the air bubble around, it'll get caught in the propeller, or impeller rather, and it will blow on through. So that's just a little trick you can do to get those bubbles out of there if you don't want to get busy pumping. So we are done. Going to go turn the water off, and then we'll get a vial and we will take one final sample and we will test the pH. So let's do that now. And I think we will pretty much be wrapping this video up. So this is simply a matter of turning the water off. Well, let's take a vial with us, save a trip. Just take a sample of water. Pull that out. And yes, I just leave that lying across my floor because I do water changes that frequently. And by now you've probably noticed I'm not exactly a neat freak. So let's see what our final pH is. Pretty much what I thought. We're looking at about 6.8, sitting right in there somewhere. So we did bring the pH up slightly, but not enough to make any significant difference. And importantly, we did not cross this neutral line and go up into alkaline water. We're still acidic. So there you go. We'll go have a look at the before and the after, and we'll do any final thoughts, and we will call that a video. So I've still got it turned to flow to the tank. And that's it. See you at the tank. And here we are. So no real final thoughts. I think we covered everything pretty much during the water change itself. So I'll just give us one final look at the tank. It's been maybe half an hour since we finished. Everybody's settled down. You can see the Congos are already back at it. My Tenopoma is cruising around looking for food. and life continues as usual. So that was a fairly significant water change. I was able to get in there and do some, maintenance on the inside of the tank, and then of course I was able to get all the filter and everything done without really bothering or disturbing anybody. I didn't really shift the water chemistry, and importantly, I didn't put any undue stress on any of the animals in there. So everything should tick over smoothly. But I will be keeping my eye on this tank for the next few days. I usually do anytime I've done any kind of work on the filters. It always pays to just sort of keep your eye on the tank, maybe check a few parameters within 24 hours and see if anything else is going on. So thanks for watching this one. Hope you enjoyed. If you're not subscribed already, please go ahead and do so. That way you won't miss anything I got coming up. I'm working on a few things right now. I will leave those as a surprise for you. If you are subscribed, I thank you. Thank you for watching this one. I'll see you real soon on the next one.